Okay. The Meraglim, which we have in Parshas Shelach. Now, again, I've been forgetting to mention people in Chutz La'aretz that they're on another Parsha. Okay, so we're ahead, but the world revolves around Eretz Yisrael, so this is what we do. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'cholam shakol mi'vedva.
Okay.
So here we have the character of Calev ben Yefuneh. Calev ben Yefuneh is the one who, when the Meraglim start saying Lashon Hara about Eretz Yisrael, again, the many ways to interpret that, Rashi says even Lashon Hara about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the many, different Perushim on the Meraglim who are not small people and what their intentions were. And Calev has the ability to quiet them down for a moment. It says, Vayahas Calev, that Calev made them quiet. And Rashi says that he did that with a tactic, right? That he started saying, is that the only thing that Ben Amram did for us? And they thought he was going to be, saying bad things about Moshe Rabbeinu. And then he said he split the Yam for us. He did all these things. And it's described in the Torah as Vayahas, right? Has is a lashon of quiet. He quieted them down. Okay, but it didn't last for very long. Right? In other words, that after he quieted them down, so they still went on protesting and crying, and the punishment for the Chet HaMeraglim, the wandering in the Midbar, continued on. However, Calev is viewed as having done something tremendous with this. The Medrash, right, says, it's both in the Tanchuma and the Yalkut Shimoni. I'll read the version from the Yalkut Shimoni, is a bit more explicit. It says, after they sent the Meraglim, and it was sent Lashon Hara on the Oretz, said even Moshe and Aaron didn't know how to respond. They describe it nisrashmu b'dover. They were like, they didn't have a strong response to what they said. Miyad omad Calev, v'hishtik kol oson ochlusim. Calev stood up and he shut them down. He quieted them down. As it says, Vayahas Calev. And then Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, he says, Tov v'gedola ani machzik l'Calev. He said, I am so grateful to Calev for what he did, clearly in this idea of Vayahas, of quieting them down. And that's why Calev is described as Vayemale Acharai, that he fulfilled his mission fully after me, and he gets a special reward. The land of Hebron, the area of Hebron, is going to be for his children. Now, the Or Chaim HaKadosh points out, one of the questions is, what happened to Yoshua? Meaning, Yoshua also didn't participate with the Meraglim. What was happening? So we find that very strange name change of Yoshua in the beginning of the Parsha, that Moshe called Hoshea bin Nun Yehoshua, which Rashi brings down, is an acronym for Ko Yoshiacho Me'atzas Meraglim. May Hashem save you from the plans of the Meraglim. Meaning Moshe Rabbeinu knew that there was going to be a danger there, and he gave this bracha to Yeshua. Now people ask, well, why didn't he give the bracha to everybody and save everybody? There would be no Meraglim. So it had to do with the fact that Yeshua had a very unique relationship with Moshe Rabbeinu. He was that Talmid Nemon, Yomer Shmitocha Oil, was always there, and therefore there's certain things he could do for him that he couldn't do for others. However, the Or Chaim says, that means Yeshua was, so to speak, out of the game. He was never tempted by what the Meraglim said. He was never swayed by what the Meraglim said. However, Calev, when Hashem describes the good that he did, he said, Ekev hoisa ruach acheres imo, because he had a different spirit. Now, the simple chat we assume was because he differed from the Meraglim. Says the Or Chaim, no. He was tempted by what the Meraglim said. He was torn. He could have tended to what they said, and that's why he ran to the Kivrei Avos to daven for help, because he felt that he was in a hard place with the pressure of the other Meraglim and wanting to be Nemon to the Shlichus of Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore he was the one who could shut them down. Meaning Yoshua, who wasn't tempted, who didn't understand the struggle, he also didn't have that ability to quiet them down, and he didn't receive the same reward as Calev. He had that particular protection. So the question is, why is this viewed as such a tremendous action that Calev did when it really didn't last very long at all? Okay, so this is a question asked by the Sifsei Tzadik. The Sifsei Tzadik was both the brother-in-law and the cousin of the Sfas Emes. His name was Rav Pinchas of Piltz. And he says like this, in the Medrash, it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu that he's machzik tova l'Kalev. He's so grateful to Calev for what he did by silencing them. He says, here's a very important point for our Avodah. Mikan raya le'odam. From here is, so to speak, a proof, an example to a person. Shahalev mishapech pam letovu pam yored. Hearts change from minute to minute. He's echoing perhaps what the Kotzker Rebbe said, right? They're all from the what they call the Kotzker Cheder. And he said, a mensch is amenuta malach, amenuta galach. A person is 1 minute an angel, the other minute a priest for Avodah Zarah. We can sometimes amaze ourselves by how we can shift. And he says, but mikom makom, even if that shift happens, shah achas tova yokar ma'od. Now, shah achas, the word shah doesn't mean an hour. In this case, it means an instant. One good instant is very precious. Dahalo Calev pa'al rak al shah. Calev quieted them down just for a moment. The chazru limrod, and then they went back to rebel again. V'kulam naflu bamidbar, and they all ended up dying in the desert, not ending Eretz Yisrael. So reading that through HaParsha, you say, "Oh, that didn't accomplish anything, right?" They quiet them down, everybody quiet, but then they came back and they did it all. So what did it accomplish? He says, nonetheless, Yokar be'inei Hashem hashehishtika am lefisha. It was so precious to Hashem that he caused that to happen even for a moment. So he's telling us this is something we have to remember for our avoda in our lives. We tend to look at things either as total, as victory or as loss.
Shachar Levan.
Yeah, shachar levan, black and white. Whereas, and we also don't understand time so much, right? Time is made up of constant renewal from moment to moment. HaMecharish betuva b'chol yom tov ma'aseh bereishis. We say HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly renewing the creation, right? I remember in the old days, if you would buy a computer monitor, one of the things you were looking for is what they called the refresh rate, right? Because the picture is getting refreshed all the time on the screen. The better the refresh rate is, you don't see any flickers or jiggles. It looks like a solid picture. But really, it's being constantly renewed all the time. So that's really what's happening to us. So when a person brings about something good in a moment, that moment is now good. It could have been one way, it could have been the other way, and you made it good. And that's eternal. Okay, so that is what he's saying over here, and we're going to see it echoed in some other sources. One that I often quote, right, is in the Chavetz Chaim quotes the Geras Hagra, who says, and this is based on Chazal, that Cholega v'rega shodom chosim piv zoche b'shvilo le'or hagonos she'en malach l'briya yecholin the shire. So it says, for every moment and moment that a person seals his mouth, that means you have Lashon Hara you would like to say, and you're holding back. Or perhaps you're going to get angry, you're going to insult someone, all sorts of negative things we could say. For every moment that you keep it closed, so you merit the hidden light, right? That hidden light that existed in Bereshit. The Gro is a big makovel. Right? It says that no malach and no creature can even imagine. So the Stipler asked, Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov Kanievsky, he said, what's that strange lashon? For every moment and moment that a person keeps his mouth shut. Say, for a person not saying Lashon Hara, you get the access to the Oragunas. What's the moment? He says, you're reading it wrong. You think it's talking about a person who doesn't say the Lashon Hara. We're talking about a person who does. He does. In other words, something happens. Right? There's a big fight in the neighbor's house. He's the only one who was zoche to hear the dialogue. Right? Everybody else wants to know what went on there last night. What happened? And you're holding strong. Right? I really don't want to talk about it. I don't want to get into other people's business. I don't. Finally, your friend corners you. You can just tell me. I won't tell anybody else. I'm your best friend. So 25 minutes after the onslaught went, he gave in. He said, okay, I'll tell you. Each of those 25 minutes brings him the Oregonos. Each of those 25 minutes is eternal, forever. And they're not sullied, so to speak, by the fact that you said the Lashon Hara in the end. Okay? Every moment and moment that the person keeps his mouth quiet there will be with him eternally forever. Even when he does that in the end.
His soul the Lashon Hara that he spoke.
Oh, correct. But there's going to be a difference. Excellent point. Okay, so here we get to something I saw on the back of a bus. Okay, this was, I don't see them doing it so much anymore. I don't know if it depends on the, please.
By the way, the Lashon Hara is mizat, it's lemafreya, making all the other shomer piv moments even more chashuv.
All right, you see, they were so powerful that you weren't able to resist in the end. So you see what he was resisting.
By actually going out.
Yeah, excellent. So the question is, right, what about the negative thing you did? Is that also not eternal and forever? Okay, so here we get to the back of the bus. Chabad at one point were putting on the back of buses teachings from the Rebbe. Okay, which is again a more useful thing when you're stuck in traffic, right, than just getting angry with the cars in front of you or behind you or whatever. And there was something that he brought that he said there's a law in physics, the first law of thermodynamics, that energy never disappears. It simply changes form. But any energy which is produced is always here. He said if that's true for a phenomenon like energy, which is still a physical phenomenon, so he says how much more so, right, for something spiritual like a mitzvah that you do, or a tefillah, or a bracha, or anything that comes from the Torah, that it never disappears. It always continues to exist and continues to influence in the world. So that fits in with this idea of every moment and moment. However, what Dr. Schuster is asking is a very important point, because what that seems to say is a positive action that you do remains forever. So number one, does simply refraining from doing something bad have the same power? Number two, doesn't an Aveira, which is also something created by the Torah, right? The Torah made the pig usher to us. So when you eat pig, doesn't that action and moment go on forever? So the answer is no. So I'll bring what I looked up, based on the back of the bus, what I could find in the Lubavitcher Rebbe's writings about this. So he addresses that idea as well. He says, first of all, the source in the Zohar, right, is just, it says, Ein, right, Ein Ratzon Tov, Shenema Lifnei Melech HaKadosh, right, it says, Dis Abed, Nikame Malka Kadisha. There's never a good thought or saying, or even Ratzon, that's done before Hashem that is ever going to be lost. He said that's his earlier source. Now, the question is, what about a negative thing? So that does not last. That does not last. Because it's not really an expression of your eternal self. A mitzvah comes from the Chelak Elokam Imal, from that godliness which is inside of me. And sure, I think something's wrong with the chupchik there. I don't see it being alive. I don't know why.
Is there an on-off switch?
I don't know.
You.
Sorry about this, folks. So, we'll see. Testing. Very strange.
The green light's moving?
No, nothing. The screen's blank.
Testing.
Oh, now it came on.
The red button.
The red button. I must have accidentally pushed it or something. All these little button pushings mean Hashemayim. Okay, so the fact that everything good we do that comes from the Torah is eternal is because the Torah comes before the world, right? And therefore, it's not limited by anything which is in this world. Aveira is not something which is an expression of your eternal neshama. right? Chazal say a person only sins when he has a state of, so to speak, temporary insanity, meaning it's when you're not being you. It's not an expression of who you are. So therefore, that can't last. That does not remain eternally. And therefore, tshuva can entirely disconnect the linkage to that avera. And the negative energy that was created, so to speak, which is limited, then has the plug pulled on it. Now, this relates to something I quote often from the Avnei Nezer, the son-in-law of the Kotzker Rebbe. It's quoted a few times in the Shem Shmuel, his son, and he says like this. We often say the phrase that when you do a mitzvah, you change things in the olamas ha'elyonim, right? You transform things in the upper worlds, the higher worlds. There are worlds upon worlds. He said, let's be honest. He said, how can I be changing anything up there? I don't even know where they are, right? Or how they work. How can I have the power to be resetting the GPS of the universe with my mitzvah? So he said, we have the principle in halacha of shlucho shel adam kamosa, that a messenger, so to speak, it's really like power of attorney. When I make you my shliach to do something, so you take on powers that only I would have. Right? Perhaps the most blatant example, even though Chazal said that one must not do this, is if I don't want to go through the whole dating process and such, and my friend is much more socially aware than I am, I ask him to please go find a wife for me and to be makadesh her for me. So he goes over to the young lady and says, Hareyat Mekudeshes, to my friend Feivel Schuster, B'tabah zu kedas Moshe Yisrael, and she accepts it in front of two witnesses. She is Mekudeshes, not to him, but to me. Okay, so that's the principle of shlichus. Now he said, who made us shlichim to do mitzvahs? We say it every time in every bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher chideshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivonu to do mitzvah X. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made us shlichim. That means that we're imbued with godly powers when we do a mitzvah. That's how we reshape the universe with every mitzvah we do. Oh, but he asked, so now what about a mitzvah lo ta'aseh? You can't make a person a shliach not to do something. Right? That I'm going to make you my shliach not to eat pork. Meaningless. So what happens there? It says there's a mitzvah in the Torah called ubo sidbok, to cling to Hashem, to connect to Hashem. Everything we do wrong distances us from Hashem. If a person has kavanah, that every time, right, why am I not doing this avera, this negative thing? Because I want to be close to Hashem. I want to be connected. So therefore, you're not doing is a fulfillment of that positive commandment, which again, you were made a shliach to do. That is what he says, how it works there in terms of even the kiyum of a negative mitzvah, right? A mitzvah lo taseh. So this is what we have. On one hand, negative things that we do are not eternal. They're not legitimate expressions of our eternal self. So therefore, they dissipate. They don't have that eternal state of the mitzvah which we do. That is something which is indestructible and even greater and further than this world. Now, the Sifsei Emes speaks about this as well. And here he speaks about it in terms of things which we will do in the future. Okay, and perhaps we'll bring the one from Shmos. He talks about it in Yom Kippur also. But in Shmos it talks about this. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu asked, right, with what schus, with what merit will Am Yisrael come out of Mitzrayim? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, Mitzrayim, when you will take the people out of Mitzrayim, Tavdu nes Elokim al har hazeh, you will serve me on this mountain, meaning they will receive the Torah. Meaning they're having a schus now, right, from something they will do in the future. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at what a person does in the future and gives him benefit even now from what he will do in the future. Because something that is eternal, exists within time, both front and back.
But also because the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't have time.
Correct. He's above time, and that's why you're right. It doesn't; these things aren't affected. But an avera, a person that say, okay, but if Hashem looks ahead and sees, right, that in Yud Gimel Elo this year I'm going to do a real bad one, does that mean I'm getting punished already now for that? So he says no, and he brings that from the Zohar Kodesh, a source. He says, right, that because a person who sins, as he said, is only when nichnas bo ruach shtus, so therefore he says, ein choshrim lahaba rak aschuyos choshrim. He says, negative things that you do in the future, again, have nothing to do with you now. A mitzvah which you will do in the future is an expression of who you are now. So therefore, right, that can be something which exists for you now at this time. Okay, so all these things are just the expression of the idea that even something momentary is not momentary. Each small thing, right, is something that lasts and something that remains. I've heard this said by poskim, even in terms of the question of a person coming to you for Shabbos, very famous questions about if you think they're going to drive home, things like this. And part of the equation, without getting into the bottom lines with these things, is that they're going to be spending 2 hours of Shabbos when they're at your house. 2 hours of Shabbos is 2 hours of Shabbos. Even if they're Mechal Shabbos afterwards, those 2 hours are eternal. Just like those moments when you don't say that Lashon Hara are eternal, those are real. Wait, he's not Shomer Shabbos. Look at what he did before. Look at what he did after. Okay, but those moments are meaningful. Those moments are eternal. And things which are also fractional. Example, there was a Rabbi Yosef of Amshinov, was a son of Rabbi Yaakov David of Amshinov. It was the first Amshinov Rebbe, as far as I remember. Anyway, he got appointed to be Rav of a certain town in Poland. He took over the job when it was close to Pesach. Now he discovered that there was a Polish army camp nearby and that there were Jewish soldiers in the Polish army camp. So he worked on 2 levels. He worked on raising money from the Kehillah. He said, I want us to make a Pesach kitchen for the soldiers to come and eat. He worked with the commander of the base to get permission for the soldiers to come and eat kosher Pesach food in the kitchen he set up. A couple of days into Chol HaMoed, one of his congregants came to him. He said, Rebbe, you know what's happening? You got that money from us to make that kosher Pesach kitchen for the soldiers? He said, they come and they eat, and then they go back to their base and they eat treif and chametz also. So he said, doesn't bother me in the least. He says, because in one corner of their stomach are my matzah and potatoes and chicken. He said, they had that time of eating kosher Pesach. That's something that's there, that's eternal, that lasts. And we tend to not pay attention to those things. Shelach.
So what is kares all about then?
So kares there's a very important Orach Chaim HaKodesh. It's connected to the mitzvah of Peah, and it's very important that people should know. First of all, they say that there are 36 types of averas that could result in kares. So you're supposed to view those as like 36 wires that connect us to eternity. So even if you break one of those, you've broken a certain connection, but you're still connected by the other ones. Number 2, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh says, don't view it as a wire that never regrows, but like a hair, meaning even if connections are severed, they can regrow. Okay, so there's nothing that stands in the face of tshuva. This is very important because there are young people who've been told, right, if you do this, you get kares, that means you're cut off from the Jewish people, you're cut off from God, you're cut off forever and always. They say, okay, why be religious then? Yeah. Right, I blew it. It's totally not true. Okay, this is correct. And I've spoken to people in the field that say they bump into so many people. It said that was the turning point for them. They did something, people told them that was kares. So they leave. The Rambam says in the end of Hilchos Tshuva, nothing stands up to Tshuva. He says, and again on the power of a moment, if a person did Averas all of his life, in the last moment that he's there, before the line goes flat on the monitor in the hospital, he says, I do Tshuva. And he means it sincerely, and it's not easy to do, but he says that person has done tshuva. He's beloved to Hashem now, right? All those things are either gone or transformed into something positive. You say a whole lifetime of Avera, but there's an idea of Yesh Kono Alon V'Shah Achas. That moment is key and is important. So let's try to remember that in all ways, on all days, the importance of a moment. And oftentimes, you know what, when you're fighting something, the fact that you can do it moment by moment and know that that moment is powerful can help you keep it up, as opposed to having to just look at forever and you say, I can't handle that, it's too much.
Very nice.
Every moment's a gem. Have a wonderful...